Agreeing to a 4-year deal with the club last week, Steve Simpson will make it back on field for the Knights this week after a month out injured.
Very confident playing, so he was always looking at this game as his comeback game, and I think couldn't have come at a better time for us.
Anthony Quinn is one of the few definite starters, but he'll be keeping an eye out after breaking a cheekbone the last time he clashed with a Rooster.
It was at Todd Burns. I ran into his knee the last game, so I'll try and avoid that.
This is the team the coach would like to see run out against the Roosters. However, he knows it'll be a big ask for some, namely Ben Kennedy.
He's going to go from very little football to 3 games in 7 days, so that's going to expect a fair bit from him.
Hagan also expects Denny Badeiras to be named a state rake in a few weeks' time, even with the push in some parts for Craig Wing. The pair will meet each other twice this weekend, one which some believe will decide the Blues' hooking role.
He was the best representative player last year, and his form this year has been as good or better than this time last year anyway. So I think he's entitled to get the first shot at the hooking spot.
No, I'm aiming at the number 9 spot, and we'll just see what happens. It all depends on form. His form's been really good, and mine's been okay as well. So
it makes for an interesting weekend. Jim Callanan, NBN News. A veteran of several premiership-winning Western Suburbs sides in the Newcastle Rugby League competition, Tony Hutton carries a hard-earned reputation as a fearless competitor. A former Newcastle and country player, he now plays in the Group 21 competition for Aberdeen and will represent Northern Division against many old teammates tomorrow.
Well, I think we all know Hutto. He's a great bloke off the field, but you've got to look for him on the field. I'm glad I'm not playing. But yeah, he does. He adds a little bit to this game.
After a slow start, Newcastle demolished Northern Rivers last weekend in the opening round. And given their player strength, Newcastle should make it 2 from 2 and book a semi-final berth tomorrow.
If we start well, I think we can come away that without sounding overconfident, but the start's the important thing.
The wet has forced some changes in Newcastle Rugby League, with the Lakes United match against South Newcastle set down for tomorrow, postponed. Late today, all other fixtures were still to go ahead. Picture a Lawn Bowls team and it's unlikely you'll get an image like this, but the Birrong Bombers aren't your typical lawn bowlers.
It was a bit of a team thing. The young blokes got together and a bit of club pride, black and white, so we all decided to go out last night and get different coloured hairdos.
But among the bleached hair and mohawks are some quality bowlers and the Premier League minor premiership. Clear winners of the regular season, it's now time for Birrong to convert that form into the major title this weekend. They play Mount Lewis tomorrow to grab a berth in the decider, while the loser will get another chance against the winner of the minor semi-final. And despite the wet conditions, the Charlestown Greens have held up well.
Very good under the circumstances. The greenkeeper Greg Goose has done a wonderful job.
Teams will decide that tomorrow, but today's roll-up certainly didn't give Birrong any scares, and they can't wait to begin play.
We like slow greens. We won well a couple of weeks ago on a slow green, so it's not going to worry us.
The semi-finals are played tomorrow with the grand final set down for Sunday. Jim Callanan, NBN News. It doesn't matter where the Hunters and Maitland sit on the competition ladder, the games are always hard-fought affairs. Nothing will change in their ABA fixture tomorrow night at Newcastle. In fact, it should only be even better, with both teams sitting even on the ladder and a top 4 spot up for grabs. The Hunters lineup looks strong, with NBL Premiership winning player Ben Melmoth now rubbing shoulders with former Mustang star Daniel Proctor. The pair will be keenly marked, especially Daniel, who lines up against his brother Peter. There's been plenty of sporting victims due to the rain this weekend, with all the Newcastle Hunter Rugby Premier Division matches washed out. The representative trial match for Sunday, though, will go ahead. 2 casualties in the NBN Soccer League so far, with the games at Toronto and Adamstown already postponed. The top of the table fixture at Western, however, is still scheduled to go ahead, with Broadmeadow heading up to Bears country.
They're ambitious young actors hoping to get that elusive break. More than 600 hopefuls took part in the Crack the Big Time competition, and these are the 9 winners. Among them is 10-year-old Nathan, who's from Perth, while 3 girls from the Lower Hunter also made the cut.
Not only do you have to be highly talented, you have to be highly motivated, and you have to be prepared to work really hard. And that's what makes a good actor.
Liz Mulliner is speaking from years of experience. She's taught the likes of Kate Blanchett and Russell Crowe how to audition. Together with Los Angeles-based acting coach Christine McClure, real talent can be quickly spotted. Each winner received a taped audition piece, which will be distributed to Australia's top casting directors and agents. But more importantly, the competition also raised more than $40,000 for ASCA, advocates for the survivors of child abuse. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
A much-loved member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church at Charlestown near Newcastle, Lance Gersbach had long dreamt of doing missionary work. Yesterday, that dream was brutally shattered in the Solomon Islands.
It's absolutely devastated our whole congregation.
Lance is the type of guy that is so caring and yet firm and strong, who, nobody could dislike.
Originally from Western Australia, Mr Gersbach and his family travelled to the island of Malaita in January to work at the church's Artuifi Hospital. There, for his accounting skills, the 60-year-old was killed with a machete on the side of the hospital's extensions. There are initial reports he was the innocent victim of a local land dispute.
The hospital's been there since 1965, so it could have been something that's been ongoing. It may be a new issue, I don't know.
Charlestown pastor Graham Loftus knew Mr Gersbach for 50 years and describes him as dedicated, faithful and happy.
He was a quiet man that worked behind the scenes. He wasn't a sort of an upfront person, but he was a doer, and he used to mow a lot of people's lawns for them. He was that sort of a practical man.
Tonight, Mr Gersbach's wife Jean and his 2 daughters are returning home to Australia. Detectives from the island nation's capital of Honiara are investigating his murder. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
It was harder for some to look at the bright side today. Birthday celebrations keeping Andrew Johns afloat after 2 losses in 3 days, while Danny Badiris had to keep his chin up. It is getting harder though. The hooker now shoulders injury, along with pressure for his blue spot. His coach hopes so, but doesn't believe the Blues build-up does any favours.
I just think we need to pick the team and get on with it, you know what I mean? I mean, just let blokes play to round 12 and pick the footy team and say, Gus, here's your team, off you go and coach them. I just think all the stuff in the lead-up doesn't help, not just our players, but certainly I don't think many players cope with the speculation and stuff too well.
Ben Kennedy's hamstring isn't either, but medical reports late today indicate it's not as bad as first thought. Same too for Steve Simpson, who aggravated a groin problem, and neither have been ruled out this week. Tamana Tahu didn't make the Roosters game with a calf strain, while Josh Perry joined him sideline yesterday with a hip flexor injury, also sustained in the country match.
I was very angry, I suppose, when I got told I couldn't play because, you know, that was our top 3 front rows were out, so it was always going to be tough for us, but saying that, the boys stood up there for most of the game.
It's the next one that's now on all their minds.
Yeah, it's probably a weekend we should forget about and just look to Cronulla this weekend at home on Saturday night.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Yourself.
Matthew Helm continues to impress on diving's world stage. These latest medals, part of the 2 gold, 3 silver and a bronze he picked up in the 3-event Canamex series in North America. The solid 10-metre platform and synchronised results helped by the 22-year-old's new, tougher dives.
What we have to do these days is to try and increase our DD, make the dives as hard as possible to really increase our chances of getting a gold medal and beating the Chinese.
While the AIS-based athlete is now gearing up for a second Olympics berth, July's World Championships in Barcelona are currently top of the agenda.
Well, I came 3rd at the last World Championships and I didn't expect to do as well as I did, and I've definitely improved a lot since then, so hopefully, you know, that's my goal anyways, is to be up there with the medals.
Also in town today, some Sydney Swans promoting the anti-smoking message among local high school students. But Jared Crouch and Paul Bevan were understandably happy to speak about the team's current form, with the Swans gunning for 5 straight wins when they take on the Kangaroos this weekend.
It's been on a bit of a roll. I had a few good wins, but you know, got to get back to that hard work, make sure that the roll continues. We're only eight rounds into the season. It's a long season, and we certainly haven't finished what we wanted to achieve just yet.
It's far from glamorous, but it's something these cowboys and girls competing in the national student titles wouldn't have any other way, especially the association's newly crowned queen.
There's not a lot of career opportunities in the sport of rodeo in Australia at this stage, but it's going to be something that I'm going to continue doing for the rest of my life is rodeo.
The student titles are for nurturing the future of the sport and preparing young riders for a potential career in an industry of hard knocks. Australia's equine capital Scone hosted competitors and their families this year, with man giving way to beast on more than one occasion.
They come out with a few bumps and bruises, but yeah, if you're good enough, you travel to the States and you go good over there. That's where all the money is.
For these young cowboys and gals, it's more than just saddle bronc and steer wrestling. After all, when times get tough on the home front, as the saying goes, they can just blame the old rodeo. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
Not for the first time, there's confusion over just where Adam McDougall and his club sit. The drama surrounding his future with the club resurfaced this morning when a breakfast radio program at the station run by the Wingers manager George Liolio announced the club had terminated McDougall's contract. The report came just days after the club had announced McDougall was cleared to resume training, but opened up a day of revelations. It's now understood McDougall was indeed given 3 options by his club. The first was to leave immediately with a $100,000 payout, despite a year and a half remaining on his contract, something refuted today by the club. Angered, McDougall eventually agreed to leave, but once the Knights learned of his medical clearance, they withdrew the offer and put contract talks on hold. McDougall, though, is now being shopped around to assess his market value, and South Sydney, who just offloaded winger Chris Walker, have shown interest. Late today, the Knights said only that discussions had reopened with Adam, but he would not attend training until those were finalised.
This Ford Transit van was barely recognisable after the crash. The van's frame was completely torn apart in the impact with a semi-trailer.
So that when we got to the scene, you could actually see inside the vehicle, and unfortunately the driver of that vehicle was thrown out of the accident at the time and died at the scene.
Police say at 5 o'clock yesterday, the driver of this semi-trailer travelling along the Nelson Bay Road towards Newcastle lost control of his vehicle, slamming into the oncoming van. A red Ford sedan then hit the wreckage. Its driver suffered horrific injuries. The driver of the truck escaped with just a few scratches. The accident blocked the Nelson Bay Road for some time. The 15-kilometre bank up made it a long and frustrating drive home for Newcastle to Nelson Bay commuters. Police say the wet road was a factor in the crash.
It's something that motorists should be mindful of, is that when the roads are wet and slippery, that it takes them so much longer to be able to stop, and it's so much more difficult for them to control their vehicles.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Cancer sufferer Mick O'Rourke has come to terms with his illness. What he couldn't handle was the pain.
The pain I was having in the leg, from pelvis down, was shocking. And nothing I was taking was taking the pain away.
The 51-year-old came to Newcastle's Mater Mercy Hospice 6 weeks ago. His pain now under control, he'll be allowed to go home soon with the support of the palliative care team. They're specialist health professionals dedicated to caring for patients with incurable diseases.
The emphasis on palliative care is not so much on dying, but on making sure that what time people have living is spent doing the best they can. So the emphasis is on living.
It's a growth area in health, and far from depressing, palliative care workers say they draw inspiration from their patients.
Because I often get to learn some of the lessons that the people themselves are learning, but I don't have to die just yet. People do come to often think about what's really important to them.
During this palliative care week, health workers hope to break down some of the taboos surrounding death and dying.
I think it can be reassuring to know that this dying business isn't done on your own, and that there are people who are keen to support you in that.
And Mick, for one, is receiving plenty of attention.
You want anything, they're there. You know, they're always here for you. Just like being at home.
Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
It's not that he didn't qualify, rather it was a miscommunication that led to him missing the draw. About to play in the Northern Territory Amateur, Nettie's hopes to back that with a good finish in South Australia to seal an Australian team spot. Two of his state teammates, meanwhile, Belmont's Nick Flanagan and Muswellbrook's Kurt Barnes, are both heading overseas for a range of events. Now, Gary, what's happening in the weather?
The Gangan military training area is one of the few large parcels of coastal land in the region to make it onto the real estate market. Now the Australian Army is finished with the site. Sale opponents claim the land, resumed by the federal government around the time of World War I, should be returned to its rightful owner.
We don't want to pay for it. We want it handed back to the community at the price that the Defence Department got it in 1916 for nothing.
There has been minimal disturbance of the 97 hectares of bushland while it was managed by the Defence Department. The Hands Off Gangan Coalition, which includes residents and environmentalists, argues the area's native wildlife and vegetation should be protected and included in the neighbouring Tomaree National Park. The group believes federal MP Bob Baldwin has a duty to raise their proposal with the federal government.
Bob Baldwin is also a councillor of the ward in which this army camp sits, and we look to him to respecting the wishes of the community, but also respecting the pristine land that we've got here.
With assessment of bids for the site expected to begin soon, sale opponents will gather in Nelson Bay on Sunday afternoon to step up the fight against the Gangan sale. Gary Blair, NBN News.
They might be facing the toughest road trip of the regular season this weekend, but today the Knights were smiling in the face of adversity. The return of Mad Dog boosting morale, and the fact all 18 players named have been available to train this week for the first time this season.
It's a little bit of warmth around the team now and you get everyone sort of back on deck.
Having already made his own injury comeback, O'Davis wants to focus on club, not origin football this weekend. And while he's keen to check out a ground where he's played plenty of football over the years, helping his team to avoid losing 3 on the trot is top priority.
If any side in the comp's a big game team, it has to be Newcastle, I think. We've always performed well in front of a big crowd.
Also looking to step up, Newcastle's forward pack.
It's a good chance for me and Simo and really most of the forward pack to show that we can stand up the Queenslanders and put a hand up for that State of Origin jersey.
The team heads north tomorrow. Meantime, sides from down south dominated the State All Schools Aussie Rules Championships fought out over the last 3 days. Consisting mainly of Central Coast players, Sydney North finished 4th, while MacKillop claimed the title for the 2nd year running. 23 youngsters earning state selection for the Nationals in August. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
It really is the key stepping stone. You look at drivers like Russ Lingle, Stephen Richards, Tander, young Jamie Whincup, who I race with go-karts. They've all gone on to V8s now.
Cessnock boasted 6 players in the Newcastle lineup and their 2 halves got the home side off to a dream start, with Troy Peterson offloading for Kane Bradley to grab first points. After adding another 2 via a penalty, Bradley quickly landed more points with his boot. This time a towering bomb blew up in Monaro's face, with fellow goanna Lance Leonard cleaning up the scraps. Monaro halfback Richie Allen had some tricks of his own, standing up several Newcastle defenders before finding a spot in the corner. Cessnock players, though, just couldn't stay out of the action. Goanna skipper Dan Smales crashing through. A simple hooker halfback play had Monaro back within 8 at the break. But that was as close as they got. Just 2 minutes after half-time, fullback Trent Sawkild raced 80 metres to score under the posts and into a country jumper. Ben Donaldson then linked with Gavin Cook, who swooped on his captain's kick to make it 34-12. From there, Newcastle was never in doubt. Peterson putting Clint Talon away, but bagging a country start for himself. While Bradley's second reflected the form Newcastle was in, with the halfback finishing off some great work with a country Guernsey as well. Newcastle 50-22 winners, with Dave Lawton, Todd Pavlo and Dan Quinn the other local country reps selected.
Well, Japan and Norway and probably Iceland this year are keen to open up commercial whaling again. And we believe that with only 10% of the world's whales left, that whaling belongs in the history books. That we're the new whalers in the world.
Well-known Newcastle restaurateur Barry Micklejohn opened his Bolton Street cafe 2 months ago, the culinary king finding the inner city location the perfect tonic for business success.
It's been amazing. I don't really understand the talk of the town saying that you can't do it in the CBD.
It's one of 50 new businesses to have opened in Newcastle's CBD in the past year, the result, according to city and business leaders, of a concerted campaign to slash the shop vacancy rate, now down from 16 to 12%. Even so, you don't have to look too far to find empty premises, and city business proponents concede there's still a way to go in filling the void.
But we do see the mall area as the incubation area, particularly with the markets hopefully starting before Christmas. And from there, we'd like to see that move further west down Hunter Street.
The Newcastle Alliance claims there are two major national retailers poised to move in within months, although their details remain confidential. Meanwhile, business people like Barry Micklejohn continue to make a go of what has been seen as tough territory, learning important lessons along the way.
You really do have to target your market.
And the work targeting more businesses continues, with the Newcastle Alliance and Council planning more campaigns. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. The horror scene unfolded at first light this morning, just minutes after two cars crashed here on the intersection of Thomas Mitchell Drive and Denman Road. A B-double approached, its horn blaring. Ambulance officers and victims from the first accident were forced to flee for their lives.
We realised he wasn't going to be able to stop, so we've quickly removed ourselves from the intersection in time to see the truck come across the road through a paddock and hit quite a large gum tree.
The ambulance officers rushed to the driver's aid, but he was badly trapped inside the crumpled cabin. A team of rescue crews was called in to try and free the man.
The 31-year-old driver was trapped in the vehicle for about an hour and a half while attempts were made to free him from the vehicle, and unfortunately he died whilst trying to be released.
While accident investigators don't yet know just what went wrong, the ambulance officers who witnessed the tragedy have praised the actions of the truck driver as heroic.
Had the truck driver not sounded the horn and alerted us to what was going on, I dare say it would have been a greater tragedy than what we've seen today.
The truck will undergo a full mechanical inspection tomorrow before a report is prepared for the coroner. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Ninth on the grid despite showing plenty of pace over the race weekend, Brock Parks wasted no time getting down to business in Germany, blasting his way up to third. A highly rated rising star in his superbike days, the feeder supersports category hasn't been as kind to Parks in 4 races. But with the tight circuit allowing skill not speed to come to the fore, the 21-year-old was soon second, and pushing hard in pursuit of race and championship leader Chris Vermeulen. The fellow Aussie watched his old friend and rival loom larger in his mirrors and then dice for the lead over several laps. But Brock's tactic of taking up the fight in the early stages gradually took its toll on his tyres. It was the end of the charge, Parks eventually dropping back to 5th, but moving up to 9th about halfway through the championship.
To parochial Novocastrians, Newcastle is already a great Australian city. However, it's more than being that idyllic place to work and play which has attracted the movers and shakers of property development to the Property Council Summit. They're here for ideas to guide the future direction of Australian cities.
And Newcastle represents one of those great cities of Australia that's not a capital city, it's a major regional city, and it's a great location because of the work that's been done here and the approach that Newcastle are taking.
Some of the 100 conference participants this afternoon got a feel for the new Newcastle with an inspection of honeysuckle, a tour which was dedicated to those who have shown faith in the project.
The fact that their peers are coming from other cities now to look at it is a feather in their cap in the work that they've done, but I think having the conference here is a feather in the cap of Newcastle.
Over the next 2 days, the conference discusses issues ranging from making cities livable to the need for affordable housing.
The Newcastle Summit wraps up on Friday with the launch of a new policy by the Property Council. It aims to draw together all participants involved in urban planning to push for a new national approach to the planning and development of cities. Gary Blair, NBN News.
And with that, a new chapter in Newcastle basketball began. The High Seas mascot chosen as a nod to the region's maritime history, the players not so much for big reputations, but for youth and commitment. Former Canberra Cannon and Australian under-22 rep Brendan Mann has travelled north with the club's old licence. Sydney King Michael Kingmar and Wellington's Geordie Cullen adding plenty of height. Also signed Kiwi international Miles Pearce, centre forward Pero Vasiljevic and American import Chris Brown, man among the likely candidates for captain.
Right now I'm just going to concentrate on putting all my effort into the Pirates and try and be one of the leaders on the team.
Looking at the big guys that we've got, Geordie and I think Miles Pearce, we're all around the same calibre and we're all around the same stage in our careers where we need to step up, and so I think we'll really help each other out in that aspect.
We've got some young kids who haven't been given great opportunities yet in the NBL. This is going to be their opportunity.
It's also a chance for Coach Palmer to return to the league, having guided North Melbourne to the championship in 1989. To be assisted by local Tim Mallon, he boasts the NBL's 6th best all-time win-loss record. But on the subject of his new team, he's urging patience.
Because it's not just going to be this season, it's a work in progress.
The Pirates will play all regular season home games out of the Newcastle Entertainment Centre. First on the agenda though, securing more signatures, sponsors and possibly plundering Hunter and Central Coast playing ranks, with trialists to get a chance to prove their worth on August 1.
There's some great local talent in your Peter Barnett, your Daniel Proctors, your Josh Morgans that we're also looking at.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
I think it's going to be great for basketball and great for the Hunter Valley area.
Transport Minister Michael Costa was on the buses today in his drive for feedback on the Lower Hunters public rail and road system. Now he wants to hear from you.
Their concerns, if they have concerns, and their direction, their vision.
The community comments will be used by the region's Transport Working Group. It's already discussing options, some bound to be controversial.
One of those options is the removal of the heavy rail from the centre of Newcastle.
The Minister says the public's views will be taken into account and says his office has already heard many concerns. But the city travellers we spoke to today had nothing but praise.
They're always very regular and on time.
A lot of those who complain about it don't use it, they drive cars.
Tell them to go in and leave it alone. Don't touch.
Submissions can be made to the Minister's office over the next month, and there are sure to be some more testing times for Hunter travellers this long weekend, with trains to be replaced by buses to allow for track work. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News. It was a grim task for a team of forensic experts and police investigators, digging up the remains of 2-year-old Amanda Britton. The girl was buried at Toronto Cemetery south of Newcastle 16 years ago. Then her death was put down to sudden infant death syndrome. Now, with the aid of modern technology, police hope to be able to determine just what killed her, with an autopsy next Tuesday. The move to exhume the toddler's remains was revealed yesterday during a court appearance by her father, John Arthur Britton, who stands accused of murdering his baby son in the late 80s. 16-week-old Andrew Britton was killed in a house fire at the family home in Toronto in 1987, a little over a year after Amanda died. Police reopened investigations into both siblings' deaths late last year, charging John Britton with Andrew's murder. A committal hearing into the case was due to begin yesterday, but was delayed to allow for the exhumation of Amanda's body. John Britton will again face court on August 1. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Both sides had a try disallowed early, but there was nothing wrong with Joey Griffith's effort for first points. He was soon followed by Stu Carmont, who finished off another movement that began deep inside Terrace's half. When Jamie Batty fed Joel Berry, it was 16-0. And the lead just got bigger when Anthony McQueen outpaced Cheetah's defence in the corner. It wasn't always pretty as the Terrace tested the referee's patience, while Aaron Lawrence's defence passed with flying colours. Up by 20, the Magpies were soon down 2 men as Brendan McKell and Mark Stubbs got their half-time break a little early, but it didn't stop the Terrace winning by 28 points. Overnight at Townsend Oval, the Butcher Boys looked good early in their effort to upset Souths, with winger Matt Turner going over. The Lions went a little over the top in defence, while fullback Fred Waters slipped past virtually none at all to score. But Newcastle rep Gavin Cook helped steer a Lions revival as South roared home to win 28-16. University's third spot on the Newcastle rugby ladder is the target for several teams not far behind, namely Hamilton, but the students had a fair start in their clash last night. Both sides were without rep players, but Hamilton made a better fist of things to take the game and close the gap on the students.
There was little left but the charred remains of this small Port Stephens cottage after a fierce fire ripped through this morning. Neighbours captured the ferocity of the blaze with a camera, while others tried in vain to put it out using a garden hose. The woman inside at the time of the outbreak told neighbours she had accidentally tipped over a heater in the house. Firefighters say heating devices can spark a fire in an instant.
Of course, with the winter coming on now, we need to make sure that our heaters, when we've got them, they're not near anything that might catch a light. Keep them away from towels and bedding, and make sure they're stable and they don't fall over onto the carpet on the floors.
The owner had only recently renovated the cottage. Meantime, fire destroyed a Department of Housing townhouse at Mayfield West early this morning. The flames quickly spread and damaged an adjoining townhouse. Everyone managed to escape. It's still unclear what caused that fire. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The award came as a surprise to vigneron Max Drayton, a fourth-generation Hunter Valley winemaker.
It was a surprise, yes. I wondered at the time when I heard about it, what the devil have I done to get an award like this? So it was very, very pleasing.
89-year-old Perce McGuigan, now a member of the Order of Australia, has seen times change dramatically since he started in winemaking in the 1940s.
To see it develop the way it's developed today, it's really amazing. We're very happy about that, to have been part of it.
Well-known Pacolban identity Chris Barnes was also recognised for his work in the wine, tourism and hospitality industries.
It's a recognition of the work I've done with the wine industry and also recognition of the Hunter Valley as the prime wine area in Australia.
On a sporting note, Terry Murphy from Spears Point has been named an OAM for his service to Lawn Bowls as a player, administrator and official.
It's good to get a medal for doing something that you like.
In all, 14 people from the Hunter will receive OAMs. John Alexander Sweeney has also been named an AM, while Group Captain Jeanette Marjorie Jackson has been awarded an Australian Fire Service Medal. Squadron leaders Linda Margaret New and Stuart James Bellingham will receive medals for their services to the Australian Defence Forces. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Much like their start to the game, neither side has been overly impressed with their start to the season. Edgeworth's Chris Berlin missing an early opportunity. He made some good inroads soon after to find space for Mick Williams, but he too was off target. At the other end, Highfields fared little better, with goalkeeper Dean Conway getting a hand on Chris Tanchevsky's chested shot on goal to clear the danger. 0-0 at half-time, Azuri found the net 10 minutes into the second. Unfortunately, it was their own. Now chasing the game, the Premiers threw everything forward in an effort to score goals and much-needed competition points. As the clock wound down, a timely goal from Tanchevsky, with the former NSL striker finishing off some great lead-up work to net an equaliser with 4 minutes remaining. Edgeworth still could have won it, but 1-1 is how it stayed.
They may think they're invincible, but health experts say many men simply don't take good care of themselves.
It's a bit like a car, they run themselves down. They'd worry about the first little sound they heard in their car and they'd go and get it fixed, but they don't worry about the first thing that goes wrong with them.
This seminar, held today as part of International Men's Health Week, looked at ways of tackling some of the big issues, and there are plenty of them. Men don't live as long as women, are 4 times more likely to take their own lives, are 2.6 times more likely to die from lung cancer, and 30% less likely to visit a GP.
Men don't go to the doctor until their leg's hanging off, and we want them to go earlier.
These and other men's health issues form the basis of a nearly completed Hunter Plan, the first in New South Wales, designed to help the region's health agencies target men.
And sometimes that's just by changing their opening hours or making it more men-friendly or producing services that really talk to men.
The plan will be presented to Hunter Health in August. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
It takes 14 years to become a radiologist. Dr. Virgil Chan is currently undertaking his training at the John Hunter Hospital, but the hospital's radiology department is now in danger of losing its accreditation to teach. The Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Radiologists made the threat following workload concerns.
We would argue that our radiologists are not overworked. We would say that Hunter Health radiologists have a fairly typical workload of radiologists in large teaching hospitals who run training programs across the state.
Hunter Health says traditional workload standards have changed. Digital technology now allows radiologists to source more images from further afield.
The threat of losing accreditation is an important consideration, but we believe we're working cooperatively with the College of Radiologists and our radiologists within Hunter Health to overcome this issue.
The latest threat only adds to the problem for Hunter Health, which is facing a specialist shortage, particularly in the area of obstetrics and in recruiting emergency department physicians. Hunter Health says it's considering closing an emergency department at one of its hospitals if it can't attract more physicians within a year. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The red carpet was rolled out, the paparazzi praying as the first-time movie stars arrived for the premiere. the toast of Carey Bay Hostel. They've acquired instant celebrity status featuring in this Tai Chi-inspired exercise video. Residents here perform the exercises weekly. The video will be used to roll out the routines to Anglican Care's other facilities.
Vital that they keep their range of movement and their flexibility. It helps with all sorts of things such as getting dressed or even going for a walk.
And residents say it's fun, even better seeing yourself on the silver screen.
Exciting, I suppose. Very surprising, really. Hadn't expected anything like it.
Presented with the hostel's own version of the Oscars for their involvement, it seems these rising stars have found the secret to a healthy older life.
Feel that I'm getting younger every day.
After 3 months in the Middle East, there was no hiding the smiles today as support personnel were welcomed back to Williamtown by the Chief of the Air Force.
Yeah, it's great to be back home.
The Expeditionary Combat Support Squadron was involved in supporting the Orions, and while these men and women didn't actually fly the planes, they did almost everything else.
Not only were they a very effective Australian team, they were working wonderfully well with our coalition partners.
During the war, Corporal Andrea McDonnell was involved in sending highly confidential information.
We had great support over there. Everyone worked together as a team and we were able to communicate with our families via email, so that was really good.
But as well as working near potential targets, they often had to work in extreme temperatures.
Your own emotions was probably challenging. The work that we did was we were well trained, well prepared for that.
And this won't be the final welcome home party at Williamtown. A further 40 personnel are still serving in the Middle East.
They're now doing maritime patrol aircraft as part of the war on terror.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.